Now, Neil, with respect, this isn't a couple of mischosen words by J.D. Vance. This is a theme. He's a MAGA shapeshifter. He doesn't appear to have any real political beliefs except for this deep-seated denigration of women. He has voted against and stood against exceptions for rape and incest to abortion. He's voted against safe and legal in vitro fertilization. He's insulted women trying to start a family. And then he just seems to get mean when pushed on it.
After nailing his last appearance, Democratic Congressman Jake Auchincloss of Massachusetts returned to the Fox propaganda network and gave a masterclass performance against one of its toughest hosts, successfully defended Vice President Harris's record, and relentlessly mocked J.D. Vance for his chronic weirdness. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video. As a reminder, Auchincloss was the subject of a previous video shortly before President Biden dropped out of the race. And again, he knocked it out of the park, right? We have seen Democratic surrogates do really well, Pete Buttigieg, Gavin Newsom among them. But Auchincloss, who is relatively low profile, really gave a stellar performance. And so I was pleased to see that he went back to the Fox propaganda network and sparred with Neil Cavuto, one of its toughest hosts. And we're going to play some of these clips and unpack them together.
And the reason that she won is because she has closed the enthusiasm gap that was existing over the last year within the Democratic base relative to the Republican base. And this is coming at exactly the right time, because just as Kamala Harris is full steam ahead uniting the Democratic Party, Donald Trump has introduced J.D. Vance to the Republican Party, and that introduction has gone poorly. He started off by insulting 46 million American women who can't have children. Or who don't have children, excuse me. He has then said he hates the police. And then when pressed on this, he described Jennifer Aniston as disgusting. And I would just offer to J.D. Vance that if your message to the American people is that Jennifer Aniston is disgusting, then you, sir, have lost the narrative.
Great line. Jennifer Aniston, of course, being an American mainstay, one of the stars of Friends, which is in turn one of the most beloved sitcoms of all time. It's my girlfriend's personal favorite. I've never been much of a fan, but she's an amazing actress. So again, he just does all these things, right? He talks about the terrible, stupid things that J.D. Vance has said. We'll probably do a video about some more recent revelations from J.D. Vance. It seems like the list is bottomless with him. But again, you see how Auchincloss is. He's well-versed on the facts. He is quick to recite them in quick order. Again, he does very, very well in this format. Another clip.
Do you, even when you frame your visits or going somewhere to say, you know, someday down the road, someone could pull this and humiliate me?
Now, Neil, with respect, this isn't a couple of mischosen words by J.D. Vance. This is a theme. He's a MAGA shapeshifter. He doesn't appear to have any real political beliefs except for this deep-seated denigration of women. He has voted against and stood against exceptions for rape and incest to abortion. He's voted against safe and legal in vitro fertilization. He's insulted women trying to start a family. And then he just seems to get mean when pushed on it. I mean, how hard would it have been to say to Jennifer Aniston, I empathize with your journey towards starting a family, and here in the United States, we want to make it easier for women to have kids with a child tax credit and with subsidized childcare. But no, he calls her disgusting. This is going to be an ongoing theme because it fits into a pattern that Republicans have with disrespect for women. I mean, look at the top of the ticket. Donald Trump bragged about sexual assault and was then found civilly liable for sexual assault. So it's not like he has a lot of credibility with those Haley voters in the heartland, disproportionately suburban women.
But do you think, I guess what I'm asking,
I mean, again, folks, Auchincloss is devastating. He might be like one of the sleeper goats of the greatest of all time in the Democratic Party, right? Again, a relatively low profile congressman from Massachusetts, but he's making waves in terms of his ability to communicate effectively and brutally, right? I mean, professionally, right? He's not, because let's be quite candid, when Representative Auchincloss referenced the fact, and it is a fact, that Donald Trump was found liable for sexual abuse, he's referring to E. Jean Carroll. And as we've discussed on this channel, the presiding judge in that case made it very clear, stated it explicitly when Trump tried to have the damages effectively overturned, that as a matter of fact, Trump raped E. Jean Carroll. He used that word, raped, that the jury in the case found that by common parlance, the way that word is used, Donald Trump raped E. Jean Carroll in the 1990s. So he could have been even more brutal, but he kept it relatively classy, so to speak, while describing the world's least classiest person, Donald Trump. And again, this is devastating. And he's pointing out a major political vulnerability that has plagued the Republican Party really for decades, but in particular, really since July 2022, when they finally succeeded in their gambit of overturning Roe v. Wade, destroying, obliterating a 50-year precedent, a super precedent that had been established multiple times and reaffirmed multiple times. Well, it revoked a constitutional right to choose to have an abortion. And politically, electorally, Republicans have paid the price ever since. They have been devastated in various jurisdictions in various elections that they had no business losing, but they're the dog that caught the car, right? So I love this case that Auchincloss is making here. Two more clips I want to play.
Well, I'm not privy to Kamala Harris's internal conversations or vetting, so I'm not going to presume to know who's on the short list. What I will say is the Democratic Party has a terrific bench of talent. We have people who can go out there and either as candidates or frankly as surrogates talk about lowering costs for Americans with a tax code that's more fair, with making housing more affordable, with lowering the cost of prescription drugs. We have Democrats who can talk about
any of these names I'm sorry, Congressman, but do any of these names like Mark Kelly of Arizona?
So since then, the day or two since this came out, reportedly, the vice president's shortlist has been narrowed to Tim Walz, the wildly successful, perhaps the most successful Democratic governor in the country. And we have many successful Democratic governors legislatively, as well as Pete Buttigieg, Mark Kelly, as well. Like the list is tapered down. Josh Shapiro, another wildly successful Democratic governor. This is a time of Pennsylvania, a state, a very important swing state that we need to win. And the reporting is that the options have narrowed further still, with Democratic Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina, my current state, bowing out, saying that he needs to stick closer to home, particularly as that the North Carolina gubernatorial election plays out. But apparently the list has tapered to Walz and Shapiro, reportedly. Pete Buttigieg is reportedly being vetted as well, the transportation secretary. So again, a deep bench. But I love the fact that Auchincloss is talking about the Biden-Harris record. This is important. So, it is very easy, and I do it myself, particularly before the vice president became the presumptive Democratic nominee. We associate the success of the executive branch with the president, right? Because they are the head of state, they are the chief executive, they are the head of government. But it is the Biden-Harris administration. And so Vice President Harris can rightfully claim, and Gavin Newsom, Governor Gavin Newsom of California, by the way, has been making this case for months. Even when President Biden was the presumptive nominee, people would say, well, maybe he should replace her with a more popular running mate. And Governor Newsom was very emphatic. He's like, no. Listen, to the extent that the Biden administration has been successful, and it has been objectively in terms of executive and legislative accomplishments, the vice president is the second in command. She's the person who is the first person the president speaks to, the last person to leave the room at the end of the day, other than the president himself. So she can lay claim to historically low unemployment, 16 million jobs created, the CHIPS and Science Act, which has presided or triggered a manufacturing boom in this country, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the single greatest investment in climate change addressing in the history of the world. Efforts also from the IRA to allow Medicare and Medicaid to negotiate pharmaceutical prices or the prices of pharmaceutical drugs with pharmaceutical companies, et cetera, and so forth. $35 insulin for senior citizens on Medicare and Medicaid. She gets to claim credit on all of that. And by contrast, the Trump-Pence record is relatively anemic. There's no contest about that. One last clip here, and that is Representative Auchincloss debunking the persistent talking point, the hypocritical, dishonest talking point coming from MAGA that the president deciding to step down from the 2024 race constitutes a coup and undermines the Democrats' pro-democracy bona fides.
Donors don't get to decide. Voters get to decide. And come November, this election's coming down to probably 200,000 voters.
Congressman, he's saying that voters didn't get that chance.
Well, in fact, they did, and here's how it works. So 14 million Democratic primary voters voted for the Biden-Harris ticket to be the Democratic nominee. When Biden steps aside, those delegates are unbound. They are free to choose whom they prefer. They chose Harris. And that is exactly the rules of the Democratic Party's election system. And I think it's pretty rich for Republicans to be casting doubt on the integrity of that process after what they did on January 6th in pursuit of the big lie. So they just are bankrupt on their credibility on that front. Kamala Harris is going to win this election.
Brutal. Again, this is so damn good. The fact of the matter is the greatest assault on American democracy, or the American Democratic Republic, as people often say. We're not a democracy, we're a republic, whatever you want to call it. We are most precisely a constitutional democratic republic. The greatest assault against that since the Civil War, at least, came from MAGA Republicans, specifically Donald Trump and his MAGA cultists, as they engage in a many months long effort to steal a free and fair election. Stop the Steal was the attempt by, actual people, who were loyal to the Constitution, who showed fidelity to the Constitution, who stopped the theft of the election by Republicans. Republicans were the ones who tried to steal the election from Democrats, from President Biden, from the American people as a whole, which culminated in the January 6th insurrection. That is infinitely more egregious than the very worst bad faith interpretation of whatever the hell you think happened here in this Democratic primary. The fact of the matter is, Vice President Harris is part of the Biden-Harris ticket. So when people voted for Joe Biden, they voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Joe Biden was not legally or ethically required to remain in the race if he decided to bow out. He was persuaded to bow out of the race when it became apparent, according to advisors and his family or whatever, that he did not represent the greatest opportunity or the greatest chance to defeat Donald Trump. He made a personal decision. Nobody pulled a lever. Nobody invoked the 25th Amendment. Nobody, invoked some sort of parliamentary procedure to either kick him out of office or kick him out of the candidacy. He made that choice, and he alone made it. He made an informed decision based on the facts. Many people believe that he made the decision too late, but it was his decision, and his decision alone. That's not a coup. Republicans are either too stupid or too dishonest to recognize the difference. Masterclass performance from Jake Auchincloss here. I hope he appears more on the Fox Propaganda Network and other right-wing news places to expose their viewers to facts that they might otherwise not hear. Great stuff. Let me know what you think in the comments.